Hello, everyone, and welcome to Walking Through the Bible. Have you ever been so afraid of doing something or facing someone that it almost makes you sick? The mere thought of having to tell someone news that could be harmful to yourself or them gets you so uptight that it cripples you to the point of almost chickening out? I'm sure you have. But anything you have faced pales in comparison to what Esther is having to do here in Esther 5. She has been told by Mordecai of a plot by Haman to have the Jews killed, a plot that he tricked King Ahasuerus, Esther's husband, into approving. And now, in order to save her own life and the life of her people, she would actually have to risk her life by coming to the king unannounced to plead on her people's behalf. That must have been absolutely terrifying for her, especially knowing how powerful the king was. Let's see how she fared. So if you have a Bible with you, you can turn to the book of Esther, to Esther chapter 5. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 8. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Esther chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. Now it happened on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace across from the king's house, while the king sat on his royal throne in the royal house facing the entrance of the house. So it was, when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you up to half the kingdom." So Esther answered, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him." Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, that he may do as Esther has said." So the king and Haman went to the banquet that Esther had prepared. At the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? It shall be granted you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom. It shall be done." Then Esther answered and said, "My petition and my request is this. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said." In the last lesson, we learned that in the moment, one should be careful in saying that God is doing this or God is doing that. Esther, a Jewish woman, had been raised up to be queen of Persia. Did God do that, or was it time and circumstance? Now, from today's perspective, we know the answer of whether God raised up Esther or not, but in the moment, that could not be said with certainty. But either way, Esther could use her position to save her people. The fact remained, though, that it was unlawful for Esther to approach the king uninvited. Justified before God? Yes, but placing her life in danger nonetheless. If the king was having a bad day, if the king was angry with her, or if it was something else, the king could very well have executed Esther for what she did. Now you might be thinking, but she's his wife. Would the king really do that? Ahasuerus demoted his first wife for not stripping for his friends at a drunken party, so to say that he treats his wives well is not backed up by the facts. Esther hadn't been called to spend the night with him in over a month. Why? Esther didn't know, but she hadn't. However, that didn't stop Esther. Now, I'm sure she was fearful inside, but stood up, faced her fear, and after 3 days of fasting, dressed in her royal attire and approached the king. And to his credit, the king extended his golden scepter, meaning that Esther, who did approach him unannounced, wouldn't suffer death for her actions. He asked Esther what her petition was, and he would grant it up to half the kingdom. Such a request should sound familiar to the Bible student, for Herod said the same thing to Herodias' daughter after she had danced seductively for him at his birthday party. That Ahasuerus loved Esther is evident here, though, for he was not angry to see her and was more than willing to grant her what she wanted to a reasonable extent. For whatever reason, though, Esther did not say specifically right then and there the predicament of the Jews, rather saying that she would like the king and Haman to join her at a banquet that she had prepared for them. Now, from our 21st century vantage point, it would be very easy to judge Esther and ask, Why didn't she just say what needed to be said right then and there? But we were not there. We cannot read her mind to know how she determined to do what she did. Was she still a little afraid? Perhaps, but perhaps she knew something that we do not. And so to judge her for delay is harsh and would be wrong, since the text doesn't chastise her for her actions here. However, having a banquet for herself, the king, and another man would be unusual, and would be a high honor for Haman, which is likely why Ahasuerus knew that Esther wanted something more. For at the banquet, he again asked Esther what her petition was, and he would grant it up to half the kingdom. But again, Esther asked for delay, saying that if the king truly wished to grant and fulfill her petition, then he would accept the delay, and that he and Haman would attend another banquet that she would hold for them the next day. We're not told the reason for this delay, but from our 21st century vantage point, we're going to see in future lessons how this delay worked out for Esther's advantage and her people's salvation. Now, yes, Esther may not have intended it that way, and she may not have planned it that way, but God can always work in ways that we do not expect. Before getting, though, the chapter will conclude with what Haman does next, so we invite you back for the next lesson when we will cover this. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Esther chapter 5, verses 9 to 14, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. We thank you for watching Walking Through the Bible today. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. But if you like this video, we ask that you consider subscribing to our channel so you won't miss out on other videos in our series, as well as share this video among your friends so that the saving message of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.